path-breaking design for AGI, Part 3, Subjective Ontology. Knowledge description is not easy. The attempts so far use ideas to achieve representations with processing, focusing on data completion and validation. The Subject-Predicate-Object Model of Resource Description Framework, RDF, provides the structure for representation. OWL, Web Ontology Language, provides the logical processing necessary for data completion. For example, the symmetry in a relationship for spouse may be used to fill missing information. Similarly, shackle, shapes constraint language, may be used to validate and identify missing information. It is proposed here that we should add subjectivity to this. The problem side of knowledge. The ontological representation of a car may cover various aspects such as two-wheel, four-wheel, and front-wheel drives. The four-wheel drive would be appropriate for rough terrains. Front-wheel drive for snowy areas. Shouldn't this be in the ontology? Useful knowledge elements are best captured as counterfactuals or misgivings, such as the fear of no traction on slippery tracks. The perceptions representing the misgivings and the desirable could then define the problem addressed to different extents by the options. These subjective enhancements will have similar beneficial effects on ontologies, as we expect to find in the new design for AGI. Intelligence equals effective subjective control of objects. It is perhaps best to sandwich the present ontology layer between the counterfactual misgivings layer and a desired layer in 3D. Clutter will be reduced, and the success of each object could be shown by the proximity to the desired/target that is attainable. Furthermore, objects use strategies to implement their solutions. The fact that different strategies may solve the same problem means that objects may be related outside their class by strategy. For example, if travel by land is blocked, the possible strategies of travel by air, sea, or even over the net should be in the new ontology. Richness of the representation. When we say that we have misgivings about the achievability of target perceptions, a distance to the target is implied. However, the separation is emotional rather than physical. To capture this, we use the EPA values of affect control theory, ACT, introduced in the first video of this series. Basically, a vector in EPA space representing any perception gap may be translated to an emotional response, using the theory. With such an ontology, we may automatically process and predict customers' emotional responses, given that their perceptions are met to different extents by given products and solutions. Extending OOPS to POPs. The subjective extension of ontology suggests a similar extension to the object-oriented programming paradigm. Capturing the subjective, problem side of knowledge, using a set of relevant perceptions has several advantages. The proposed perception-oriented programming system uses the enhanced model to process subjective information. The subjective system may be programmed to record the changes in perceptions as a result of actions by objects. For example, the perceptions of every employee in a company could be updated for every action taken by the system. Intelligence requires the parallel processing of subjective and objective elements. Doing something and knowing that we are doing that something is what distinguishes us from zombies. One of these processes requires knowledge from the solutions domain, the other from the problems domain. Therefore, all intelligent systems must possess mechanisms and representations to independently process these in parallel. Ignoring subjective representations and processing will inevitably lead down a dead-end street, not a single step closer to AGI. Achieving subjective control of objects. The fact that subjective control of object representations has to be accomplished very early in cognition creates special problems. The representations have to precede naming systems, and have to rely entirely on sensory data and emotions. All implementations for objective and subjective processing necessary at the time of inception of cognition will be inaccessible subsequently because these can neither have an objective nor subjective representation in our cognition. However, we can infer that the inaccessible elements are essential for intelligence, and therefore, we need to implement methods to produce consciousness and emotions at the inception of cognition. AGI design requires retrograde analysis. The book is a study in retrograde analysis. AGI design is about identifying the elements that must be implemented and ready before inception of cognition. The proper design should then be trained to evolve under supervision. Thank you for your interest.